Happy Saturday, everybody. Here we are back out in the woods again. And today we'll be talking about friendships, and that's something that I struggle with. I don't consider myself having many friends. Maybe some people, feel that way. Some people, feel like they have lots of friends and everything. So anyway, I just thought this was a good message to kind of enrich my thoughts on the idea and everything, because I tend to be a loner. I like maybe one or two people, kind of around, but not big groups and things like that. Anyway, message that I found interesting. I've sat here for a while now, just going over everything and trying to make sure I gained a better understanding of the message and everything. That being said, though, so much knowledge and everything contained in here that it's impossible for one man, to understand it all. There's people that search, their entire lives through the Bible. And, like Jesus said, in them you think there's life, but in me is life. And the Spirit is the life. So we're never going to understand it all. I am far from that. That being said, I'm sure there's lots of connections and everything that I'll fail to see. And as I was doing earlier, over and just trying to understand sometimes just the simple things in these stories. Anyway, so, whatever I go over here and everything is just how the Spirit has interpreted things for me and to me, and in the process where I'm at now. You may be much further along in that spiritual wisdom and everything. It's not about what you think and all that. The Spirit has all the knowledge and the power and everything that's living in us. So, but if you're like me, you want to understand things to the best of your ability. It's a constant study, I've went over these stories several times, and no matter how many times, I keep seeing further, more and more levels to the depths of the knowledge that is in these stories. No matter how simple of a story it may be, it's just so amazing how they just keep connecting in so many ways. Anyway, so this will be a longer one. I just want to cover this well. It's a great story to be told. That being said, we're going to start in Romans chapter 12, verses 10 and 11. I may add a couple in there just because I think they pertain well, but yeah, I'll start with 9. Romans 12, chapter 9, or chapter 12, verses 9 through, we'll see. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, and honor, giving preference to one another. Not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer. And it starts off, how many friends do you have? At first, lots of names may come to mind, but the longer you think about it, that number will likely dwindle. Many of us do not have a great quantity of genuine friends, the ones who remain loyal no matter what. This dependable, intimate closeness is what the Lord wants for us. I say that again. This dependable, intimate closeness is what the Lord wants for us. But it's a rare treasure. That's also the relationship He wants with us. A dependable, intimate, close relationship. It's a rare treasure. The biblical account of David and Jonathan can help us learn how to foster such a relationship. Their story demonstrates that genuine friendships are built upon a foundation of mutual respect, love, and authentic commitment. So we're going to go to that now, 1 Samuel 18 through 20. So we're doing the chapters, right? 18, 19, and 20. And I'll go through these quickly as I can. Anyway. Now when he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul took him that day and would not let him go home to his father's house anymore. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. You know, they made a promise to one another, bound by God. And Jonathan took off the robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armor, even to his sword and his bow and his belt. So David went out wherever Saul sent him and behaved wisely. And Saul set him over the men of war. And he was accepted in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. Now it had happened as they were coming home, when David was returning from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women had come out of all the cities of Israel. I'll pause here a moment as the pig decides where he's going to lay. He's rustling up some leaves. That's Butterbean, in case some of you don't know. You happy yet, Butter? Okay, maybe he's far enough by now. We'll back up a little. Now it had happened as they were coming home, when David was returning from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women had come out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing, to meet King Saul with tambourines, with joy, and with musical instruments. I'll pause there to, give some highlights on some of the things that were going on. As David was returning, an event in the immediate aftermath of the famous battle, it's in chapter 17 if you want to read the battle, is mentioned here. Women came together from across the land to celebrate the national victory and their national champion to meet King Saul. The suggestion is that this was the usual pattern. It was the women would just come out and greet them all as they came back. So the women sang and danced and said, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. Then Saul was very angry, and the saying displeased him. And he said, they have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed only thousands. Now what more can he have but the kingdom? So Saul eyed David from that day forward. He got jealous of him then all of a sudden. They weren't singing to him anymore. And it happened the next day that the distressing spirit from God came upon Saul. That's an important thing to notice there. If you remember how Saul got his, got to be king and everything. And just, it's interesting to me anyway that a distressing spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied inside the house. So David played the music with his hand, as at other times. But there was a spear in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the spear, for he said, I will pin David to the wall. But David escaped his presence twice. So, this spirit really came upon him where he was uncontrollable. And for some reason, I guess, he had his weapon there in hand, ready to go. And to me, it's interesting when he had, that spirit, he just made him grasp onto it, basically carrying it around with him, just full of anger the whole time. Now Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from his presence and made him captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Therefore when Saul saw that he behaved wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and came in before them. Somebody they got to see and cheer for, made them feel good, and he was doing great things. They were blessed because he was blessed. And then Saul said to David, here's my older daughter, Merab. I will give her to you as a wife. Only be valiant for me and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, let my hand not be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him. So he's kind of setting him up. Instead of me being the bad guy, I can just put him out there, put him in a position that maybe some harm will come to him. But then I'm not going to be blamed, It's kind of what he thought. And that way people wouldn't be mad at him. He could use David's, street cred to gain some brownie points on his side. So David said to Saul, "Who am I, and what is my life or my father's family in Israel, that I should be the son-in-law to the king?" But it happened at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given to Adriel, the Mahalathite, as a wife. I want to see if there's anything, more on that. Let's see, that's in 19:17. Saul had previously promised to give his daughter to the man who killed Goliath. Here, he linked the marriage to future conquest, hoping that David, it doesn't really tell us why she was so, but it was politics back then. It had happened a lot. Now, Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. So Saul said, "I will give her to him, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him." Therefore Saul said to David a second time, "You shall be my son-in-law today." And Saul commanded his servants, "Communicate with David secretly, and say, 'Look, the king is delighting you, and all his servants love you. Therefore become the king's son-in-law.'" So Saul's servants spoke the words in the hearing of David. And David said, "Does it seem to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing I am a poor, lightly esteemed man? I'm a nobody. You know what? This is a big deal." And the servants said to Saul, servants of Saul told him, saying, "In this manner David spoke." So they told Saul what David said. Then Saul said, "Thus you shall say to David, the king does not desire any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to take vengeance on the king's enemies." But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. So when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to become the king's son-in-law. So, basically, to marry a king's daughter and everything, you had to have something great and big to give as payment, I guess you could say, or just the gratitude of the level of gift you've received. So it was like customary to come with great treasures, whatever it may be, to show how thankful you are. So David was like, "Man, I don't have anything. This is kind of going to be embarrassing, and I'm just a nobody. That makes no sense." So when his servants told David these words, it pleased. So anyway, he couldn't pay him. So therefore, David was just gonna, instead of paying me, you could just go out and pay me this way. So he was setting him up. So when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to become the king's son-in-law. So he's like, "Okay, that's something I can do. I can go out there and bring back 1,000. There's lots of different terminologies we can use for that 1,000 of whatever he's bringing back, but we'll just leave it open. So when his servants told David these words, it pleased David to become the king's son-in-law. Now the days had not expired. There was a time limit to which David had to fulfill the conditions of the dowry. So therefore David arose and went, he and his men, and they killed 200 men of the Philistines, and David brought their skins, and they gave them in full count to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. Then Saul gave Michal his daughter as a wife. So he fulfilled it, and the king, Saul was disappointed. But Saul knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. So now he's in a position he didn't expect. God's going to give him all these crazy demands. So now how do I deal with him? And Saul was still more afraid of David, so Saul became David's enemy continually. Then when the princes of the Philistines went out to war, and so it was whenever they went out, that David behaved more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name became highly esteemed. You know, he carried himself with honor in everything he did. He wasn't like the normal soldier that went out there and just did what they wanted because they were a soldier, you know, and that way, and you had to kind of let them. But you could also, their integrity, you know, they were known around town by how they acted, you know, and it honored people to see David be in that such high of a position, but act with such integrity. And that's what, you know, he became highly esteemed because of that. Now Saul spoke to Jonathan, his son, and to all his servants that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted greatly in David. So Jonathan told David, saying, "My father Saul seeks to kill you. Therefore, please be on your guard until morning, and stay in a secret place and hide. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you. And then I'll tell you what he says." So Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul and said to him, you know, "Don't let the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hasn't done anything to you, and because his works have been very good towards you. He's done nothing but help you. For he took his life in his hands and killed the Philistine, and the Lord brought about a great deliverance for all of Israel through David. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood and kill David without a cause?" So Saul heeded the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, "As the Lord lives, he shall not be killed." Then Jonathan called David, and Jonathan told him all these things. So Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in the presence, as in times past. And there was a war again, and David went out and fought the Philistines, and struck them with a mighty blow, and they ran away from him. Now the distressing spirit from the Lord came upon Saul as he sat in the house with his spear in his hand again, and David was playing music. Then Saul sought to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he slipped away from Saul's presence, and he drove the spear right into the wall. And David fled and escaped that night. Saul sent messengers to David's house to watch and to kill him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, "If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you will be killed." So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed. She made a fake dummy and put it in the bed. And when Saul sent the messenger to take David, she said, "He is sick." Then Saul sent messengers back to see David and bring him up to me in the bed that I may kill him. So, bring him to me. I'm not even getting out of bed. I'm going to just do it from my bed. And when the messengers had come in, there was the image in the bed, with a cover of goat's hair for his head. Then Saul said to Michal, "Why have you deceived me like this, and sent my enemy away so that he has escaped?" And Michal answered and said, "He told me to let him go. Why should I kill you?" Basically, he threatened my life. So David fled and escaped, and went to Samuel at Ramah and told him that all Saul had done. And he and Samuel went and stayed in Naioth. Now it was told Saul, saying, "Take note, David is at Naioth and Ramah." Then Saul sent messengers to take David. When they saw the group of prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as the leader over them, the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they prophesied. And when Saul was told, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. It's, the working of God's Spirit distracted Saul's messengers from their purpose and protected his servant David. That's what is so I like there, is that God sent a spirit that distressed Saul, but then he sent the Spirit of God came over all of these messengers that he was sending so strongly they forgot what they were doing, and they just started prophesying with Samuel and everything. Another spirit just coming over them at the time, or the Spirit. They call them by different names, but it's the same Spirit. And then Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they prophesied also. Then he also went to Ramah and came to the great well that is at Sechu, and he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And they told him, They are at Naioth and Ramah. So he went there. Then the Spirit of God was upon him also, and he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth and Ramah. And he also stripped off his clothes and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. So therefore they say, is Saul among the prophets? Like, is Saul a prophet, or was he just king? Anyway, the Spirit of God came, and he was just like everybody. They were all completely nude, laying out there, stripped off all their clothes because the Spirit of God was moving so strongly over them that they couldn't even be bound. All shame and everything they laid down and out. Then David fled from Naioth and Ramah and went and said to Jonathan, What have I done? What is my iniquity, and what is my sin before your father, that he seeks my life? And Jonathan said to him, By no means you shall not die. My father will do nothing, either great or small, without telling me first. And why would he hide it from me? It's not so. He just didn't believe that his father was actually going to kill David. Then David took an oath again and said, Your father certainly knows that I have found favor in your eyes. And he said, Do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death. He's basically telling him how serious it was. So Jonathan said, Whatever you desire, I will do it for you. Saul's own son is like, just tell me what to do, because their bond was so strong. And David said to Jonathan, Tomorrow's the new moon, and I'll fail to show up because they had to keep their feast and everything. So let me go that I may hide in the field until the third day. And if your father misses me at all, then say, when he brings me up, ask him permission that I may go to Bethlehem and do a yearly sacrifice for all the family, because it was David's place in the house to do that. And if he says, It is well, your servant will be safe. But if he is very angry, be sure that evil is determined by him. And you shall deal kindly with your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant with the Lord with you. Nevertheless, if there is iniquity in me, kill me yourself. For why should you bring me to your father? So if David had actually, done anything wrong, he was telling Jonathan, just kill me now. But please, why are you going to bring me to your father? And he's letting him know, I'd rather you just kill me now if I've done wrong and deserve this punishment. But please don't take me to your father. And Jonathan said, Far be it from you, for if I knew certainly that evil was determined by my father to come upon you, then I would not tell you. Then David said to Jonathan, Who will tell me? For what if your father answers you roughly? And Jonathan said to David, Let us go into the field. And they both went out. And he said to David, The Lord God of Israel is witness. When I've sounded out my father sometime tomorrow or the third day, whenever he brings you up, and indeed there is good towards David, and I do not send to you and tell you, may the Lord do so and much more to Jonathan. If he just leaves him out there and doesn't give him anything, and when he's safe. But if it pleases my father to do you evil, then I will report it to you and send you away, that you may go in safety. And may the Lord be with you, and he has been with my father. And you shall not only show me the kindness of the Lord while I still live, that I may not die, but you shall not cut off your kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord has cut off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, Let the Lord require it at the hands of David's enemies. Now Jonathan again caused David to vow, because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Then Jonathan said to David, Tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed. It was kind of like Thanksgiving for us, where you're not going to be there at this meal, and you've been there. It's been a big part of my life that he was truly expressing to him. Even though they had a plan, it was still sad that he wasn't going to be there at this feast. And when you have stayed 3 days, go down quickly and come to the place where you hit on the day of the deed and remain by the stone, Ezel. Then I will shoot 3 arrows to the side as I shot at a target, and then I will send a lad saying, go find the arrows. He was going to send a secret code, holler out, send this kid down, and I go, and if I say, look for the arrows are beyond you, go your way, for the Lord has sent you away. So if he tells the lad to go this way, then it's safe for David to come back. If he tells him, no, the arrows are further out, go on, he was basically communicating to David. He says, go get them and come. That's him saying to David. Or if he says, no, they're beyond you, go your way. So if anybody's listening to him, they could, Then David hid in the field. When the new moon had come, the king sat down to eat in the feast. Now the king sat on his seat as at other times, and on a seat by the wall, and Jonathan arose. They didn't sit there with their backs to the door. And Abner sat by Paul's side, but David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul did not say anything that day, for he thought that maybe he's unclean, because you had to maintain ritual cleanness to be able to attend the feast. So if something happened that you were unclean, you accidentally touched an animal or many other things, then you couldn't attend the feast. So he kind of expected him to be there. And then the next day, the second day of the month, David's place was empty. So Saul said to Jonathan, why is the son of Jesse not come to eat? He wouldn't even say his name. Either yesterday or today. So Jonathan answered Saul, and David earnestly asked permission of me to go to Bethlehem. And he said, please let me go, for our family has a sacrifice in the city, and my brothers have commanded me to be there. For now, if I have found favor in your eyes, please let me get away and see my brothers. Therefore he has not come to the king's table. Then Saul's anger was aroused against Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman. And he cursed his mama too. He was so mad. Do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, you shall not be established, nor your kingdom. Now therefore send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die. Saul was pointing out his own jealousy, that not only is he losing his kingdom because of David, but Jonathan is losing his kingdom and wasn't going to be king. He was trying to appeal to his sense of pride and everything and break the bond that he knew he had with David by reminding him, look, you're going to lose everything to this kid. You better do what I tell you. And Jonathan answered Saul, his father, and said to him, why should he be killed? What has he done? Then Saul cast a spear at him to kill him, by which Jonathan knew that it was determined by his father to kill David. So he kind of got the point. There was no talking his dad out of it. He was mad. He was bound and determined, no matter, even if he killed Jonathan. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger and ate no food the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, because his father had treated him shamefully. So it was in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and a little lad was with him. And he said to his lad, go find the arrows which I shoot. As the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the lad had come to the place where the arrow was with Jonathan, when the arrow was with, yeah, that's a bit of a tongue twister there. So when he got to the place where the arrow was that he had shot, Jonathan cried out after the lad and said, is not the arrow beyond you? And Jonathan cried out after the lad, make haste, hurry, do not delay. So Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came back to his master, but the lad didn't know anything. Only Jonathan and David knew of the matter. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to the lad and said to him, go, carry them to the city. He made that act like it was a big important, hurry up, come here, quick, take this, run. And didn't really tell him why. So that way the kid couldn't report any news, wouldn't know anything, wouldn't be standing out, got him all scared and sent him on his way. As soon as the lad had gone, David arose from a place towards the south and fell on his face to the ground and bowed down 3 times. And they kissed one another, and they wept together, but David more so. Then Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, since we have both sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, May the Lord be between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever. And I like that part. May the Lord be between you and I. That means everything that we do, we have to take it through the Lord. May the Lord not let anything pass from me to you that he doesn't intend, and the same vice versa. And everything you do to me has to go through the Lord and our descendants. So he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. Okay, we've reached that, All right. Now the first component of that, for true companionship, there must be appreciation by both parties of the other's godly qualities. This starts with an attitude of valuing all people, knowing that they were created in God's image and are loved by him. But at the same time, the regard that David and Jonathan displayed toward one another was greater than mere respect. It revealed admiration for the attributes each had that they were commended in Scripture. They appreciated the qualities that each other had and the type of qualities that are in the Scriptures about what makes a good friend, what makes a respectable, honorable person. Who do you choose as your friends, and what is your estimate? Is it just somebody that you party with, or you can laugh with, or is it based on biblical principles of worthy characteristics? Do they show love? And we can go back to Romans there. It goes on. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, given to hospitality, distributing to the needs of the saints, blessing those who persecute you. There's those are the types of attributes that we want in our friends. Consider your friends. Do they exhibit godly characteristics that you respect? And do they, in turn, have admiration for the biblical qualities they see in you? Do you respect your friends, the people you call your friends? Do you have a admiration and a love for the character and the qualities that God has put in them, and you see that in them shining those characteristics? This mutual respect is a necessary foundation for genuine friendship. You have to admire each other's qualities. It's not just that it's somebody you want to just be nice to because you feel bad for them. That's not really a friend. And then it goes on to how to foster true friendships. And there in 1 Samuel 18, 1-3, we all want to be in genuine relationships with others. And God created us with this longing. And we can see that in Genesis 2:18. It tells us plainly why. And the Lord God said, It is not good that man should be alone. For the first time, a negative assessment appears in Genesis. God did not want Adam to be lonely, so he fashioned a helper comparable to him. This helper or partner would be a truly fitting and fully adequate, just right. When God said, I will make him a helper comparable to him. But it's one who helps, not anything lower, not like it's beneath him or whatever. One who helps. It's described when he comes to our aid. It does not refer to someone who is secondary or inferior. God's promised that he would send us the helper, the Holy Spirit, and God himself, God the Spirit. He would come. God is our helper, so it's not like your helper is someone lower than you. But it said, it is not good that man should be alone. He doesn't want us alone by ourselves, and just hiding out, not sharing that intimate, close connection with someone. And multiple people, all of our friendships should be based on those standards. That's the type of friend we want to be, and that's the type of friend we want to have. But healthy friendships don't just happen. They require intentional effort. Yesterday, in looking to Jonathan and David for a biblical model of godly companions, we saw that mutual respect is vital. Let's look at two more aspects of their relationship. Both of these men expressed selfless love for one another. Their hearts were knit together. 1 Samuel 18:1, where we got there. When he had finished speaking, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. When one man experienced joy or sadness, the other man felt it as well. They also had genuine devotion for one another, which is a type of commitment that involves giving to show loyalty. Jonathan gave his friend material items like his robe, his belt, and weapons, but those are also symbolic. He was symbolically showing him, my place is your place. What I have is yours. I'm not above you in any way. You can take my place anytime you want. I'll gladly have you make my decisions for me, or if in my absence, or whatever happens. We're equals. And in some ways, I honor you more than I honor myself, but even more than that was offered, Jonathan risked his life and future kingship to save David from execution. He literally put his life on the line. His father threw an arrow at him, trying to kill him. Notice, too, that Jonathan was a prince, and David was just a lowly shepherd. Social status shouldn't interfere with cultivating a true friendship. We were designed for true companionship based on respect, affection, and commitment. And I also find that, when we think about that what did they call Jesus? Friend of sinners. So even to the sinners and everything, he was a friend. He showed respect, he showed us affection, and he was committed to them. This requires not only time, but also transparency and selfless devotion. Trust is needed when taking a risk for friendship, but such relationships are worth the effort. And I hope many of you do have the type of friends like that you can connect with and everything, and that you uplift each other's character and everything. And for a lot of us, that's our partner and everything, and our wives or our children and things like that. But we also have to understand that we have a different type of relationship. Like the words for love, when you go to there's several different breakdowns. There's different types of love. Like the word we get for Philadelphia is brotherly love. And that's what we're talking about here. There's a separate type of love called for your family. And then there's, agape love, which is service, where you're doing things, so they had different breakdowns of the word love. So a lot of us don't have those type of friendships, and even some of us that do, we don't understand the true meaning of what a friend is supposed to be, the depths of all of that. And that's the type of friend Jesus wants to be to you. So that's what I like about that, is we do have that friend, but God also wants more for us. He wants us to have connection with fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, that type of friendship that is open and honest, forgiving, compassionate, and there for one another. If he tells us to love our enemies and do good to those who hurt you and everything, what more are we supposed to do to our friends? Like when we get mad at our friends, we don't even talk to them or anything, much less do good to them. But this is telling us, even if we are mad at them, we're still supposed to look after their needs, show them respect, nurture, build them up, uplift them, constantly pray for them. You know, it's a two-way street there. This is what we're supposed to do for each other, putting others before yourself. And I hope to maybe I can, as I look towards the future of building friendships with people and everything, I've had friends that I've known younger and everything, and some of them I do consider friends, but it's not someone that I'm around. There's not very few people that I'll, call to check on every once in a while or may do the same for me. I hope to establish that and have a greater network of friends. So for our own, each other's good, to help us grow and have that community and that network to be able to depend on one another to help uplift the glory of God and to, give that agape love to those around us, because we're so much stronger together than we are individual. A three-knit cord is seldom broken. I hope this message helped you as it helps me understand and prepare me for a better future serving in his kingdom as a soldier of light. Thank you guys. God bless.